Good evening, Adepts. As members of the Order of the Bloody Cup, we dedicate ourselves to the lore that thirsts and the principles that seduce, birth and hunger. Our hours are the Malachite, the Flower Maker, and, of course, the Red Grail. The concepts surrounding Grail are deceptively all-encompassing, with characteristics being found in the Beachcomber and the Twins. Common membership amongst our brethren include midwives, lovers, and addicts of all kinds, alongside those who know how to tempt these feelings out of others. Those who hold great power in Grail are known as Cyprians. Two that we know of are Saliba and Rhaenyra, who both display Grail in significantly different ways. Rhaenyra is an intensely beautiful woman, who both commands great power from this and demands the worship of those who are also aware of it. She is a model for both the seduction and jealousy of the Red Grail and is very much the object of desire. I am drunk with her, bare shoulders at the opera, 100 ruby smiles across a crowded restaurant. Her smile dims if I am caught, even for the shortest of times, admiring another pretty thing, but she knows she is the beating heart of me, the lifeblood of my work. I am lost in her lovely arms, her mouth as sweet as myrrh, hers is my heart, my goddess, she. Saliba sits firmly on the opposite end of this spectrum, where his companions are subject to his own desires. He exemplifies the hunger and greed of Grail, taking his companions to darkened rooms where his unique appetites can be sated. I would not say it ended badly, but there is little of me now. Our outside activities waned over time, and so, I know, have I. As I dwindle, my lover takes greater and greater interest in me. These days, he hardly leaves my side, and I hardly his room. Soon, he tells me, a smear of something wet beneath his eye. Soon. Another is the infamous Hokabald of Posund, a forge-long and somewhat rare example of a male Alakite. Hokabald is one of several examples of a being personifying Grail for not only being a gourmand, but for his existence as an ultimate conclusion of both birth and hunger. Posund complains of his condemnation by the Ordo Limiae. He acknowledges that he has undergone alterations after the consummation of that particular delight, but insists that these changes are both elegant and inevitable. Who is the fire and who is the fuel? He asks rhetorically. Power in Grail allows us to take advantage of the current of desire running through each and every being, moulding people's actions to our needs. The most powerful mortals in Grail are known as Cyprians, and are often known for their ability to entice, having companions helplessly fall in love with them, no matter the cost to themselves. The Long of Port Noon are a group susceptible to this. Port Noon was founded on the site of a notorious spring. Drink from it and the world will forget you. Some among the Long have retired there from the affairs of the greater world. They don't treat trespassers kindly, and it would be foolish to assault them. But they may be susceptible to the amusements of Moth, or the seductions of Grail. The nature of immortal life has caught up to the denizens of Port Noon, and only the rarest of delights provide any excitement to them. Despite our principle being centered around a potentially niche concept, that being sensation, we find our powers affect almost all corners of life. As the Thunderskin, the Hour of the Heart, was once a name of the Red Grail, and as blood is entirely the domain of the Tide, now subsumed by the Red Grail, the unceasing law will indeed cease in the face of succulence, and heart will convert to Grail. However, Grail will subvert to Moth. The concepts of desire cross through both laws, with the yearning of Moth being far more primal and fundamental than the carnal desires of Grail. This subversion also sheds light on one of the oldest arguments between different followers of the hidden arts, that being the identity of the first god from blood. Was it the Red Grail when she drank the tide, or the Moth who stole the skin of the wheel? Soham's writings veer from poetry to confession. He identifies gods from flesh, those who are mortal, from blood, those who arose from sacrifice, from light, entry from the glory, and from stone, those who arose before this knowledge. He insists that the Moth was the first god who was blood, but later contradicts himself and claims it was the Red Grail. Invoking Grail within ritual can summon one of the more confusing entities under her purview, a raw prophet. Sometimes it divides, sometimes it unites, sometimes she speaks words of warning, sometimes he advises on appetite. His prophecies are confusion, their whispers confound. As a quick side note, these guys look a lot like the flag of Sicily, don't they? They are bewildering and apparently enticing. The exile knows of them as undergoers. When active, an undergoer is a flexile, half-formed, horribly alluring thing, eager to consume or be impregnated by mortals. But in its dormant state, it's a friendly knot of tentacled flesh, cawing, dribbling, and snoring by turns. They are able to have children with humans. The exile is in contact with a man who is the great-grandson of one of these creatures, a man known as Vasil, the Five-Goer. A smoothly handsome man whose unhuman ancestry is not apparent, unless you know to look for his abnormally flexible fingers, or wonder why his nose tends to run. Interestingly, while it appears to be the case that while he is unharmed and unbothered, he is able to maintain appearance as a human, if Vasil becomes fatigued, he seems to become quite adversely affected. Vasil's exertions have softened his shape, for now he has retreated, dripping and cawing, to somewhere warmer. A particularly powerful invocation Grail, with just a tinge of Forge, which our subject is said to have flirted with so often, allows us to summon one of the names of the Red Grail, known as Azim, the Second Thirstly. Azim is a lot of things, seductive and smooth, both physically and socially, scholarly and above all, powerful. A Thirstly is a rank within the Red Church in the Mansus, alongside Ivories and Lovelies. He is able to teach us Phrygian.
Ah, Phrygian, the Great Mother's tongue. Of course, if you have enough Greek, I guarantee that the experience of learning Phrygian will be very pleasant.
Its power and sumptuousness is able to grant us a stay of execution, most likely by feeding us a drop of its blood, or whatever it is that a Thirstly has running through their veins.
Open your mouth, tilt back your head, we shall let one drop fall. Swallow. Yes, you will be better now.
As we have discussed, as a holdover from the consumption of the tide, blood has become the domain of the Red Grail. Remember this information for later. Practicing the concept of rebirth, Azim will also take an offering of our reason, wounding us in a monstrous way, but to those with the means, this is but an opportunity for redemption.
I knew her in the wake. Her arms were fewer, her arms were warmer, but her mouth was always cold. Call me a liar, I dare you, or come here and I will kiss the fifth history deep into you, where no one will see it, not even you.
It's not certain who it is that Azim means. I believe it's most likely referring to the Forge of Days, since Azim is said to have flirted with her so often, and the specific reference to heat, but, as I said, there is no agreement on who Azim is referring to. That being said, let us move on. With Grail's specific purview of intense sensation, it is no wonder that we have perhaps the widest assortment of followers. One specific organisation we share our worship with is the Sisterhood of the Knot, an, as the name implies, mostly female-led organisation that follows the Red Grail, the Malachite, and the Horned Axe. Their worship later included the Thunderskin. One of the notable members amongst the Sisterhood is the person known as Lady Tryphon, a rare example of a man within the Sisterhood and one who was canonised as a saint. Saint Tryphon, Neurula explains, performed secret miracles in the name of She Who Bleeds and Bears and She Who Opens. Thus Saint Tryphon opened the way to the House of the Sun. Thus Saint Tryphon underwent the Great Birth, an ascension to immortality. The Great Birth refers to the seventh mark of ascension, where one will pass the tricuspid gate and become a Long of the Grail. The mechanics of this can be covered later, but it does involve the act of rebirth, specifically giving birth to yourself. When Saint Tryphon did this, he ensured that his new body would be that of a woman. Perhaps this is the reason for her sainthood. For us to further explore the depths of sensation, we should explore the hours that grant us desire, grant us hunger, and grant us birth. Firstly, the eponymous Red Grail. She is the 15th hour and the first god from blood, having ascended to our hood during the Lithamaki by draining the tide and stealing its power for herself. Naturally, this slaying of the gods from stone caused some tension between the remaining god from stone and the rest of the hours. This led to what is known as the flaying of the Thunderskin. Seek the cup in the birthing bed, the Pine Knight is told. The midwife at the birthing bed, to his amazement, is the Mountain Mother. In a fit of awe, he both gelds and flays himself. The vigilant storm bursts joyfully from the remains. The tale differs depending upon the author. This version focuses on the fact that the Thunderskin sacrificed himself, with a specific reference to gelding. This references a lesser known fact that the Thunderskin had been a lover of the Red Grail, though had also come to love the Ringyu. It is also known that the Red Grail is a notoriously jealous hour, not only with reference to her partners, but with her power. The witch and sister served underneath the Grail before becoming hours of their own, and the Thunderskin's ascension was a direct challenge between the Grail and twins over the control of Heart. Regarding the intercalate, it is worth noting that the priestesses of the Knot who followed the Red Grail welcomed the coming union of the Forge of Days and the Sun in Splendour. The remainder of the text consists of gloating remarks by the Grail priestesses of the shaping that will come, interpolated with warnings and laments from those of the sisterhood who served the Ringyu and especially the Horned Axe. Nevertheless, an invocation to the Forge is included as part of an attempt to urge it onwards. The most likely reason for this is that the Red Grail encompasses, amongst many other things at this point, the concept of birth. The coupling of the two gods from light would result in the most glorious birth, and the further consequences be damned. Those who ascend under the Red Grail are colloquially known as the Red Long. While they are not a faction unto themselves, it is telling that they are a common enough occurrence to have their own nickname. In order to ascend, one must first pass the Stag Door and become No. The gaining of further marks of ascension is achieved through the acquisition of the body of a third party, not necessarily alive, to appease your ambition. Extensions and Eruptions is the nickname for the fifth mark. I have developed 2 new fingers, and only one is on my hand. I have a fistula in the crook of my knee. Pressure upon its edges is a soft glow of pleasure. I think that the bulge at the small of my back is a new organ. With a grand culmination of Grail, yet a further victim, and the collection of 6 marks, one will attract the notice of the Red Grail and be granted passage through the tricuspid gate. I am swollen with the lives of others. The seams of my body begin to rupture. Now I invoke the Red Grail, who is the mother of mountains, who consumes, who is the source. In her name I will give birth to myself. The tricuspid gate opens. I will be immortal, along, favoured of the Grail. For a little while I dwell in the high rooms of the Mansus, and then I return through the tricuspid gate, and I tear free of the sticky rags of my old flesh. My new body is smooth without, and red within like a sweet fruit. My limbs are strong as cables, my senses are knives. I will not grow old. I will walk the world in the service of the Grail, feasting, growing. Perhaps I will rebel. Perhaps one day I will rise even higher. The concept of rising higher brings us to someone who is destined to be forgotten despite their importance, the Apostle Obstinate. The one who nourished us has ascended to a higher state, in one history at least. The past is uncertain, but I will prepare the feast for their next ascension. Provided with the singular task while the delight remains in hiding, the Apostle must assemble the ingredients for a grand ritual, named the Vitulation. The delight shall give life. The delight shall take life. The delight shall not be sated. We must purchase the secret savours and infuse them with the hour's gifts. Assemble the host. At the most auspicious time, raise the resistless cry of the unceasing mysteries and share from the chalice murmurous. As simple as this may sound, each part of this recipe presents its own complications. I have a disease, my blood is wrong, my bones are sick. I'll die, but perhaps I can preserve myself long enough with the holy blood of our delight. When this blood is provided, it will allow us to be reborn. This is very similar to how a Zeme is able to assist us with its own fluid. I have received a little vial of our Delight's blood via courier. Our Delight's instructions are written herein, in the tiny tangles of cellular script. We can taste them as they will taste us. If we waste it, our Delight will wax wroth. This caveat ties the Apostle to the Delight through absolute necessity as well as through loyalty. The proper consumption of the delightful blood will entirely alleviate the Apostle's symptoms, at least for a time. The blood of our Delight warms me. It makes red flowers in my cheeks. It pours out wine in my heart. It twitches my strings in the rhythm the Grail taught the Thunderskin. I shall live a little longer, I have decided. This gift of further life is not mere charity. It is also necessary to purchase a set of spices known as the 7 Graces, which we can infuse with the salt, copper, myrrh and rust, the sweet, figs, nuts and malt, and the sweetest, strawberries, cinnamon and orange blossom. This is only achievable when additionally combined with several extremely rare occult ingredients, the true blood of St. Januarius, lethe, and amaranthine nectar. The artifact, known as the Chalice Murmurous, must also be procured, known for its ability to heighten the potency of anything consumed from within it. On those nights when we drink from the chalice, we are not certain afterwards what we have done, but we may be assured it is what always has been done, and if we do not remember, our children will, in their redmost dreams. Next, we must find ourselves a host, who can be no other than Our Lady of Wires, the holder of the flaying key, and the hungriest theologians, already known to be a hungry lot, marionettes. Sulochana Amavasya will provide us with contact with her sister by obligation, and from then we must gain Marinette's trust. We must acquire 7 marks of approval, done so by doing the obvious, feeding those who hunger. Marinette always leaves the skin. Sometimes she leaves the bones. If we tell our loyal followers to close their eyes, it's over very quickly. To those who find this unsavoury, Marinette does not discriminate between the loyal and those who have been merely hired. She'll consume the hired help eagerly enough, but the hired help generally objects, and then there's generally a fuss. By generating mystique around the upcoming vitulation, a throng will naturally form around us until it reaches its self-perpetuating mass. Marinettes will gladly become their host, ready to present the key. Beyond this, there is only one final ingredient to the grand culmination of Grail. To join with the Grail, our Delight must give life and take life, and be not sated. So it is that I am the centerpiece of the vitulation. A child of the Delight's body would fulfill the requirement, but one cannot enter the Mansus in triumph when one has committed the crime of the sky. So it is me, and I submit to the binding and to Marinette's marinations, and the 7 Graces and the 3 Savours overwhelm me, and when the first mouthful is taken, almost I do not feel it. Almost I do not feel it at all. It's us, and it has always been us. As our body finishes its preparation and we become the centerpiece of a grand feast, our sacrifice summons the flaying key, and Marinette will throw open the Kingskin Gate to allow our Delight to ascend to namehood. I have been the keystone of a sumptuous event, and even as I am scattered, I know joy. My Delight will dwell forever in the chambers of the Grail, as they so rightly deserve, and I will live nowhere at all where the Applebright has found me. She has gathered my last few fragments to caress and console and restore in her rich baskets of nutritions, and she promises me that sometimes, when she is the witch and I am inside her, she will show me the world again. We may not survive the act of being eaten, but the Applebright awaits us in nowhere, an extremely dangerous but extremely knowledgeable god from nowhere. Her plans with us are unknown for now. One additional, as yet unnamed complication to the Apostle's work is the presence of a long seeking to prevent the ascension of new names at any cost. Our enemy is one Lady Tryphon, a Grail long who has left a trail of broken souls through the best hotels on the continent. She is beloved of the Grail and the Flower Maker. She inclines to intrigue, but she is no stranger to violence. Battling any long would be an extremely difficult task for any mortal, let alone a long significant enough to be canonized as a saint of the Sisterhood of the Knot. Fighting the Lady Tryphon through starlight, might, and naturally through intrigue, and yet prevailing, will have the following occur. My love, I am defeated, and you, my vanquisher, have won my devotion. I enclose a remaining scrap of myself, and go forth to meet my demise. Consume what remains of me, and we shall be one, as the Flower Maker has always intended. Reject your delight. Your destiny is far greater. You will ask, is this a last trick, a desperate stratagem to assure your betrayal? I can only answer, taste me and see. I remain your delicious friend, T.E. Consuming this remaining shred of Tryphon will allow the Apostle to shrug off the delight and their obligations, and to pursue their own ascension. Of course, if this path is not taken, no ascension of any name will remain unbothered for long. Enter Julian Coasley. Our enemy is a Winterlong, identified by the initials JC. His motives are obscure. He has always professed alignment with the Oblivious and their successors, who have no truck with the wars of the hours. But here he is, to spoil our day. A man of uncertain loyalties, though he is likely a long under the sun in rags, as the librarian of Hush House tells us. Julian is known to be Winterlong. At a prescribed date, his hour patron will ensure him a beautiful ending, but until then he is even harder than most long to dispose of finally. That said, he is known to have been defeated by an ascendant long in the 1920s, and his true current status, a diminished survivor, a determined memory, something else, is the subject of esoteric debate. Beautiful endings are the purview of the Sun in Rags, but that does not mean he holds Julian's loyalty. Indeed, it appears that no hour does. JC is somewhat of a revolutionary, believing that the current power pyramid of the Mansus is oppressive, and seeks to weaken the hold of the current powers that be. Enemy, I am not so easily destroyed, but I will acknowledge that you have defeated me, and so I will reward you with my counsel. You are a fool, cozened by a fool to emplace one more stone in the walls of the Mansus. You may, if you choose, cast that stone away into night. Should you so cast it, you will die empty and alone, as do all, even the Long. You might die free. A difference with this letter to the Apostle is that accepting Julian's advice of betrayal does not open up their own path to ascendancy, but instead results in only one path forwards, that of the dedicated worker, a mundane yet sweet life uninvolved with the higher mysteries. I have my fire, my books, my clock, my window on the world where they do other things. I could have been unhappy. I'm not unhappy. This was a successful life, and when it is over, the sweet earth will fill my mouth, softer than splinters. Truly, Julian is a worm of worms. The Flower Maker is the 19th hour, a god from light who holds the sphere of indulgence and addiction. He is said to create wonderful things, things that are too wonderful to bear. Some pleasures, the formulae voluptuous attest, are so intense they can corrupt the laws of the physical world. This text catalogues some of those instances. The Lily King is venerated through pleasure. When the wolf is at the door, turning to the Flower Maker is an avenue of relief. In times of especial crisis, I might visit a discreet pharmacist to purchase a tincture of opium and make my dreams sweet, but only in times of especial crisis. His birth came from the Forge of Days, in an event now known as the Forbidden Acts of the Forge. Birth occurs at the conjunction of pleasure and torment, so the first forbidden acts of the Forge birthed sparks of delight which took root in the glory or in nowhere, who can say? So the seeds of the Flower Maker were planted, though for long years he was nothing but an unfulfilled ache. Alongside Lady Tryphon and Rhaenyra, a man by the name of Lord Franklin Bancroft venerates the Flower Maker. A Raquel, dilettante, infuriating prodigy, possibly dead, possibly real. Bancroft is significant for his long dalliances with one Lady Eva de Wolf, the 7th Baroness Branckrug, and the arguments he caused with her for dedicating Eva's favourite sofa to the Malachite despite her winter worship. He is also the author of the Bancroft Diaries. Lord Franklin Bancroft was initiated into the arts of the flower maker by the Rose Witch, Fiona Ayrshire. He rose to become a society provider of occult services and secret pleasures before his abrupt disappearance in 1790. Bancroft seems to have been a talented adept, but devoted his energies to frustratingly whimsical projects, arranging grape-fetching races between Mansa spirits, teaching percussagants to juggle, and conjuring storms or imaginary blossoms for the Rose Witch Ayrshire, who resolutely refused ever to couple with him. Bancroft spends 20 pages bemoaning this last. By using his talents in these ways, perhaps he is the most worthy of the occult powers we're bestowed. There is a name of the flower maker by the name of Carpellus, encountered by the dancer when undertaking the fourth change in the form of a fox. My fox self will pad ever deeper into the lilies. Carpellus, the flower maker's name, awaits me by the stream with his gift-honed body and his crown of reeds. There he will unlock the places in me that have not yet seen daylight. The Malachite, often known as the Ring-Yew, is the third hour. She holds the domains of desire, restlessness, and whimsy. Bees are also heavily associated with the Malachite, and she is the third original hour within the Sisterhood of the Knot. She is known to be a very old hour, having ascended as a god from flesh at some point between the Lythomachy and the flaying of the Thunderskin. As one of the wood hours, she has ties to the Great Hooded Princes, having been blackmailed by the Velvet in order to send aid to the princes when their seat in India was threatened by a vast Timurid army. The result of this was a quarter of the invading soldiers being devoured by bees. As a part of the Ring-Yew's conception of desire, she is known to partake in a forbidden relationship with one of the gods from nowhere, the Mare in the Tree. The real hours don't meet the gods from nowhere, but the Ring-Yew meets the Mare in the Tree where the woods grow lush. Their couplings are forbidden, and forbidden things have power, and this is the story of their couplings. This connection can be seen in the background of the Mare's Tarot, where a singular beehive is visible through the branches of the trees. However, the Malachite is an hour of desire, not one of secrecy. This segues us onto the final hour we shall discuss within Grail, the Beachcomber. While primarily an hour of knock for his uncovering of that which does not belong, he is also the hour of voyeurs and gossip and the emotions caused by both of these.
Oh!
His spying on the Ring-Yew and the Mare in the Tree is the thesis of this, and his participation in the roost is likely more of an expression of his Grail tendencies than his knock. Thank you for attending, Adepts. For more lore, feel free to join the library. Otherwise, please go forth and spread the thirsting words, for nothing can resist our sway. It isn't what is forever sought, but what forever seeks.